All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Nice picture, Carl. Good evening, everyone. I know it's very exciting. We have our first very, very cold day, so I just want to welcome everyone today. Please take advantage of the wonderful refreshments that our co-chair and the CEO here of COSI, Dr. Frederick Bertley, and his team put together for us, and we want to thank them. A couple housekeeping rules because we have some guests in the house. The restrooms are up the stairs to your immediate right past the little dot ice cream machine, and then you'll make another right. And so you'll find the restrooms there. We're going to try to keep the doors closed because there's other activities that are happening, so we want to be mindful, just as we've asked them to be mindful of the noise. And so without further ado, I'm going to have Councilmember Tyson come up and open the meeting. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Yes, it's November in Columbus, right? We're all getting ready for the holiday season, and what a blessing it is for each and every one of us to be here today. I want to again thank Dr. Frederick Bertley for hosting us here at COSI, and so thank you. I also want to quickly, if we can, because we have some different people at our tables representing different groups, can we quickly just kind of go and around the table and introduce yourselves? Let's start with Pat.
Rise, Sister Rise.
Frederick Bertley, COSI.
Warren James, fighting CA Columbus.
Beth Gill, Franklin County Juvenile Court.
Mary Cusick, community volunteer. Tracy Ross, First Congregational Church.
Wendy Smooth, The Ohio State University.
Nettie Ferguson, Advantage. Clyde Clark, First Church of God.
Lindsay Ally, Columbus Police.
Ben Tyson, Easton Town Center.
Thank you, and so thank you for your leadership and serving on this commission. I also want to recognize some guests in the room today, and they are women who are taking a class with Dr. Wendy Smooth, and they are, of course, they're Ohio State University students, and they're taking a class on Black women representations and power. So we're very excited that they're here, and they have just completed a section in the course of a Black childhood, Black girl childhood, correct. And Dr. Smooth, do you want to say anything else about the girls that are here today?
City of Columbus and the state of Ohio is in good hands with a group of innovative students such as these. So thank you all for being here with us.
And we certainly welcome all the other guests that are here today. We're excited that you have taken the time to join us at our Commission on Black Girls meeting. And so today we are going to be focusing on homelessness. And the reason why we're going to focus in this area is because you do have some information in front of you. But there are more than 1,000 families who were served in Columbus shelters last year. And of those 1,000, 93%, so that's 930 women, families were headed by women in our shelter. And of those 93%, 72% are African American women. The average age is 32 years old. They have the average number of children are 2, and the majority of the children are 7 and younger. So just think about 7 from 32 is 25 years old. We also have the average income, their average income per month is $712. $712. So you can see why they would possibly be in the shelter if you're only making $712. And if 30% of that is supposed to be used for your income, you're talking about, for rent, you're talking about $210, $220 a month rent. And when you think about the average market rate, 2-bedroom in Columbus is $910. And so so it would take actually for a mother to be able to have an apartment in Columbus, she must work 84 hours a week, which means she's not home with her children. And the mom is only making $8.30 an hour. To be able to afford a market rate apartment, you have to make at least $17.50 an hour. And the women that have come to the shelter, 36% of them are unemployed. So if you think about those numbers, that's why we're doing this work. Because we've got to ensure that we're not continuing to fill the shelter with women, and especially women of color. And so today we're going to hear some presentations as to why we have women, girls are in our shelter and what we can do to turn it around. So we're going to hear about the foster care system and about the homeless system. And so with that, I am going to turn it over to our co-chairs, Fran Frazier and Frederick Bertley.
Thank you. Since August, we've been looking at physical health and spirituality of Black girls. In September, we had a presentation on behavioral health. October, we looked at education. This month, we're looking at child welfare and homelessness, and next month, we're looking at juvenile and social justice. As we begin to take this deeper dive into what's going on with Black girls, I am asking the commissioners to start thinking about where are the gaps in our understanding about what's going on with Black girls? What else do we need to be looking at? What other kind of issues should we be exploring ourselves so that we have a better understanding of what's actually happening with our girls? And are there areas that we need to look at that significantly impacts the quality of life of Black girls in this city that we haven't explored yet? So I'm asking you to be mindful about what that could be. And what maybe do we as a commission need to have a deeper dive conversation about so that we're more educated, that we have a better understanding. So I'm just asking you to think about that. If you have ideas, you can send them to myself or Frederick or Councilmember Tyson so that we can then move in your recommendations. So I thank you very much for that.
Anyone want to have a moment? Anyone want to provide any feedback to what our co-chair just presented before we start our presentations? If not, we will move right along. Don't be shy. All right, wonderful. Well, thank you very much. And again, if you guys see any broccoli in my teeth, please be sure to tell me, because I've had this thing. Fred provided something for me in my nutritional habit, and so thank you so much. But without further ado, I'm going to bring up a phenomenal entity that serves us well with this topic on child welfare. As we said, we're going to talk about child welfare and homelessness, and so we know that those things often go hand in hand when we talk about all of the social determinants of health. And so without further ado, I'm going to bring up Mr. Chip Charles Spinning, and who will introduce his staff, and then they will do their presentation. While they're doing that, I will be passing around some information. December 5th is Black Girl Magic Day, which is a fundraiser, and so we want to make sure that we provide that information to the public. So please feel free to take one as this information is coming around. Without further ado, here's Mr. Spinning. Thank you.
Thank you. As Pat said, I'm Chip Spinning with Franklin County Children's Services. And I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the quality of life for Black girls within Franklin County, specifically within Children's Services. And I have two staff members here that I'd like to do this presentation. Raquel Breckenridge, she's the director of our Permanency program. And then we have Tania Still, who's the director of our Malika program. So, thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of Black girls in Columbus, and thank you for the work that we are all combined pulling together to do, which is so important for the quality of life of the African American girls that are our daughters, our friends, our loved ones, our children's friends. And so it's important that we collectively do this work. Franklin County Children's Services, we'll just start briefly by going over our mission as an agency. We are definitely committed to children of all colors, but for this particular point, we'll be addressing African American or Black girls. Our mission as an agency is through collaboration with families and their communities. We advocate for the safety, permanency, and well-being of children, of each child we serve in a manner that honors family and culture. And what that means is that we absolutely want to make sure that our children of Franklin County are safe, but we also need to do it in a way that we honor families, that we respect families, and that we acknowledge that they are the authors and they're the authors of their own experience. And so it's important as we go into this work and we're working with families and we're working with children that we honor where they come from and where they've been. Our vision as an agency is safety, permanency, and well-being for every child. At the very core of what every child is entitled to and what every child deserves are safety, to be in a safe environment, permanency, to belong, to have a sense of belonging to somebody and something, and well-being, which means that we make sure that their basic needs are met and that they have physical, emotional well-being and health.
Of the children in our agency, Black girls currently make up approximately 21% of children that are served by our agency. Of those 21%, those are girls who identify themselves as Black or African American. This number does not include those who identify as multiracial. That would be categorized in another category. And here we have an age breakdown of Black girls that we serve. If you want to pay attention to the bottom blue areas, those are youth ages 11 through 18 that we serve, which makes up approximately 39% of those in our custody. And here we have a breakdown of placement types. As you see in blue, foster care placements make up 51% of girls. Kinship homes, which is one of my permanency departments, we currently have 25% of Black girls placed in kinship homes. That number has risen, has actually doubled in the last 4 years. In 2014, we were at approximately 12%. So we do see that number increasing, and we continue to do work on front-end placements for our Black girls and also any kids that come into agency custody. Currently my kinship department, when kids are in agency custody, at the initial custody, we work those as emergencies, reaching out to relatives, going out to homes, contacting caregivers, actually talking to the child as well. One thing that we try to do is talk to every youth that comes in and see if they have a relative, whether it's kin-related, bio-related, or even a fictive kin, such as a teacher, maybe a school coach, or someone important in that youth's life. For residential centers, that makes up about 17%. These are girls who may have some treatment issues and who also may need to be further assessed. What we see with girls coming into custody, maybe some anger issues, a lot of trauma, maybe issues with being parentified, being in a parental role, taking care of siblings. So some of our kids who come in, they really may not want to go to a foster home, may have issues with authority coming from a foster home, especially when they've been taken care or been put into a parental role. What we try to do is make that stay as short as possible after they are assessed, and we're able to look at what their special needs are. Lastly, group homes. Group homes make up about 7%, and this population would include many of developmentally delayed youth who may need multi-systems involved, because at some point they sometimes have in need of an adult group home setting. Also, it includes teens that we are not able to find foster homes in county for. We try our best to keep young girls and any child in their current community, current school setting, and close to family. Some of the older youth that are in this population may be some who may be coming from a kinship home, a foster home, or residential center, and preparing for transition into adulthood, what we call our emancipation youth. A lot of times we'd like to transition them to a group home setting where they're able to have a little bit more freedom, a little more independence while they transition on.
So how do we do the work that we do? As an agency, we do it with over 700 staff of our own, but we also have to enlist the community because these issues that we're dealing with, they're a community issue and they're a community situation, concern, or problem. And so we have a couple of programs that we have in-house within our agency for our youth, one of those being a Malika mentoring program and our College Bound program, which fall under our volunteers department. Under our volunteer department, we reach out to the community to invite adults, other like-minded adults, other adults who are committed to children, other adults who want to be that inspiration to children or want to be that positive role model for children. In particular, our Malika mentoring program is our cultural and gender-specific program where we match African-American females between the ages of 6 and 18 with African-American female mentors in the community. Mentors are vetted through our program, making sure that they are bringing to the table something that's positive so that they can invest in the life of our Black girls. Our College Bound mentoring program also is a one-to-one mentoring program, and what those mentors do is they mentor children ages 14 and up. So they're looking at high school age children. Under that particular program, they're helping our young people start to think beyond. What's going to happen beyond high school? What's going to happen in my life? And so they help them to explore opportunities in the community like traditional four-year universities or two-year universities or a trade school, something that will help them better their lives.
We also have our Therapeutic Arts program, which we refer to as TAP. And what that is a non-traditional type of therapy. For any young adult, but we do have mostly African-American girls enrolled and participating. We have one dedicated staff, Ms. Cherie Johnson. I believe we had 2 youth that previously presented, and if you remember, they both mentioned Ms. Cherie as a very good support person to them. She provides pro-social activities with the youth, arts, dance. We have an art show every year, which our TAP participants make all the art, and any proceeds are given directly to the youth. This year we have awarded about $4,500 for youth for participation. She also, again, like I said, she's a support person, and the main goal of the TAP program is to allow the child the ability to function and communicate in an effective way during crisis. As I said before, many of our African-American girls have some anger issues, maybe issues communicating what their needs are, and Ms. Cherie does a great job with helping those youth. We also offer independent living services for those in agency custody age 14 and up. We offer life skills classes for any youth in agency custody. We also offer independent living assessments and plans, which are individualized for each person who comes into agency custody. And for our African-American girls, that may mean what an education, in regards to whether they want to go to college, budgeting, basic independent living, cooking, cleaning, budgeting, looking for apartment, preparing for adulthood. We also offer a annual conference for our teens down at Deer Creek. And we also serve post-emancipation services for any youth who ages out of our custody age 18 through 21. We assist with referrals to the Bridges program, and youth that are not eligible for Bridges, we personally serve those. That includes any youth residing in Franklin County, even if they've aged out of custody of another county or another state, if that state is a Bridges state. We also have a youth advisory council, which is made up of former and current foster care youth. We have usually 12 participants, and what this does is provide a leadership opportunity for our foster care youth and also give them a chance to voice what they would like to see for foster care youth in the future in regards to services, treatment, foster homes, foster placement settings, or anything that they think they view as important.
Quality of life of Black girls with agency involvement. For anybody who is sitting around this table, certainly you have some insight into the quality of life for our Black girls, for our young African American girls. And we kind of assume that children are raised in a safe environment, that their basic needs are being met, that their educational needs are being met, that they have access to medical and mental health. And once all of those needs are met, then their well-being is up and great and good, and they have positive relationships that they know how to navigate, In an ideal world, that would be what our young ladies face, but that's not the truth for the young ladies that we serve or the individuals that we serve. The young ladies that we serve all through this, whether it's to their environment, they're raised in an environment where there's domestic violence or their basic needs aren't being met, their educational needs aren't being met for whatever the reasons are, and there are a whole host of reasons why families are unable to meet the needs of these children. But what we see with the children that we serve in particular are interruptions to all of these things. And sometimes we see multiple interruptions in a young person's life in all of these areas. And every time there's an interruption to their basic needs or their education, then that sets them back. And so they're already starting kind of behind the 8 ball. And that's what this work really is about, is bringing it up so that there's a level playing field, and so that when they come against those interruptions in their life, that they're not so detrimental to them that it stops them from moving forward and, propelling forward and being able to have healthy well-being, mental, physical health, and then also being able to engage in positive and healthy relationships. Again, whether that be intimate relationships, familial relationships, or whether that be just appropriate, that they're expected to act appropriately. Because then we see the trickle-down effect. And what that trickle-down effect looks like is then we expect these children to be put in a parental role. And then we expect them to delay their lives or their gratification because they have to meet the needs of their siblings. And so those are the children that we work with every day that are up against those odds. And as an agency, as a community, it's our responsibility to make sure we're giving families the tools and resources that they need to improve their quality of life. Is this me?
For outcomes of services, one thing we try to do is ensure Black girls and all youth remain in their current community and educational setting. And that we also foster positive and ongoing relationship, not only with kin, also any other supports in our life, friends, and anyone that they want involved in their lives. We also have, I just lost my train of thought. Timely permanency with any family member. And timely permanency refers to either reunification, adoption, or legal custody to a guardian, whether that be a bio-related or a non-related kinship person. And also, I want to include in their emancipation, that is our least resort. If a child does not age out, that we prepare them for adulthood and set them up to be successful. Also, one of the outcomes of services that we provide for improved educational outcomes for youth. We see our numbers of college-bound youth increasing, and also trade schools. We put a lot of focus on trade schools and other alternatives to college, because we do understand not all youth are ready or wanted to attend college. We also offer our Chafee incentive program for any youth in agency custody ages 14 and up. It provides an incentive. We do it on a quarterly or semester basis for good grades, improvement in grades, job, any extracurricular activities, or also for graduation and college enrollment. We also try to foster healthy relationship and lifestyle choices, which a lot of times we do through our independent living classes, also working with our provider networks who are caring for these children, making sure that their needs are met and any special needs. And that we actually are doing, first off, assessing what the needs are and making sure we're able to meet those creatively or traditionally. Also, we want to ensure that Black girls are resilient. And that they also have an extended support network through natural kin supports. As I mentioned before, we try to maintain those, and also in the community. For permanency challenges, here's some of the things that we see as struggles with achieving permanency for Black girls. Many youth, as you may want to stay with their siblings. They want to stay in the state of Ohio. They want to stay close to extended family members. They also want to remain in their same school setting and community. We do have a lot of kids who, especially for adoption, that is one of the main barriers for ages 14 and up. Not only Black girls, but other teens. They're tied to where they are. They don't know anything different. And sometimes they're not open to exploring other areas or something new. So that's something that we work really hard on, but again, that can be a barrier. Also, we have youth with many treatment needs. We may struggle to find a provider or a permanent home that is able to meet those needs. We also service a lot of medically fragile clients or children. So sometimes that can be a barrier to finding permanency. And also divided loyalties. Sometimes, specifically for adoption, many children think that adoption means I can't see my family. I can't have any contact with my biological family. And what we try to focus on with those ages 14 and up is adoption is not about losing ties to your family. It is providing a stable environment for you, leaving foster care, and knowing that your needs are going to be met until you are ready for adulthood. It's not about you not being able to see your mom or your sibling. We do try to keep our sibling bonds for any kid that comes into care, even if kids are separated, through sibling visits, ensuring those occur, contact, also with our young adults, ensuring that they understand that they still have that connection. And with the change in the law, that we know that the sibling bond is maintained, even after adoption.
Opportunities and provision of services. What we want to see, and we've kind of talked a lot about this, is the increase in kinship placement and supports when removal from home is necessary. And in short, what that means is when kids know where they come from, when they're connected to where they come from, even if there are, again, those interruptions to their life, then they're still able to have a sense of self-identity. They're still able to have a sense of self-worth. They're still able to maintain those connections that are really, really important to them, even though we may see removing them and putting them in a better environment. We see that as better, but what we know in theory isn't always what's real in practice. And so it's important for us to maintain those kinship placements. Increase involvement and participation in leadership opportunities. It's important for our young ladies to have opportunity. It's important for them to be invited to those tables and to be invited to have their voice heard and to just know what that means to have somebody value what's being said about them. A lot of people come into these rooms and they talk about them, and so having them as part of those conversations is really important. But it takes teaching them how to sit at the table and how to be a voice for themselves and how to advocate for themselves. And so that's our challenge and our charge as an agency. And everyone sitting around this room, that's our charge, to make sure that they know what that looks like, whether that be different entities within the community providing programs, and then it's just us communicating and connecting and knowing what's out there, knowing who's doing what in the community so that we can extend those opportunities to the young ladies. We want to build a culture of equity through the agency to foster positive outcomes for Black girls and all children and strengthen relationships with our partners. What that means is, I don't know what it looks like to be successful. I don't know what it looks like for somebody who looks like me to be successful if I never see it. And so those of us who are doing the work, it's important for young ladies to be able to see individuals that look like them. And so from our agency perspective, we're trying to shift our culture so that there are more individuals, and there are more individuals at the table who are making decisions about these Black girls be representative. And it's not just enough to say that we want to see more Black women because we're talking about Black girls. We want to make sure that we're being culturally sensitive as well. Because I'm a Black girl, my experience is different from Raquel's experience. It's different from Miss Pat's experience. And so we want to make sure that we're being sensitive not only from a racial perspective, but also from a cultural perspective to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our children that way. And so we have to have a workforce and we have to have community ties that represent that. And as an agency, we're trying to shift our culture. Thank you, Mr. Spinney. Is this me? And so we're just about done. What can this commission do for the Black girls? I think this is you, right? Oh, that's me. And so what can we do is we can just have more individuals that are willing to stand up and connect with Black girls. You know, it takes nothing to sit down and have a conversation with them. It takes nothing to extend yourself with just a word of encouragement or a smile, or become a volunteer for these one-on-one relationships that these young ladies need in their lives. But it takes us reaching back. It takes us when we're in our girlfriend circles and we're at our family cookouts or we're at our family gatherings, holidays are coming up, we're gonna be in connection and communing with a lot of family and friends. And so it's that time that those conversations are happening, that you are talking about this work and the importance of this work and how you can reach out. It doesn't take a huge number of people to impact or make a difference. If you just start with you, then other people will catch on and they'll start to do it too. And so look at the volunteer opportunities. Schools need help. Go to your local school. Mentor a girl, ask if you can do a group, those kinds of things. When you're sitting at your kids' Little League games, I can't tell you how many softball games I sat at, you know, start to have these conversations so that people understand the importance of the work.
I would like to add one more to that list. Also partnerships with other civic and philanthropic organizations. A lot of times what we see as a need for our children are summer programming, after-school programming, self-esteem workshops, leadership opportunities, summer job employment. So partnerships with also the Y, Columbus Parks and Recs, as she mentioned, the library. But all those are opportunities for kids to engage, and also the kids are more easily accessible to find those kids for services. With that also said, not also the programming, also there's usually a cost involved, and many of our Black girls are not able to afford those type of programmings. So the funding will also need to be there as well.
And I'll just add to that. Now we're jumping on the bandwagon, and I'll end with this. The more time you spend with these girls, we start to shift our own perceptions of them. We start to think differently about them, and we start to see them in a more positive light. And so the best thing that we're hardwired for connection as people. And so the best thing that you can do is just give time and energy and attention. And guaranteed you'll get as much out of it as the young ladies will. That concludes our presentation. Does anybody have any questions?
Actually,
Yes, ma'am, Ms.
we
Fran.
will.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I try to run your show. I'm sorry, Miss Fran, I apologize.
So we really want to thank you for the depth of your presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
I really think you gave us a really good idea about what FCCS does in our county and in our city, specifically targeting the girls that we are focusing on right now. I know that my co-chair has 20 questions for you. So we're gonna let him ask the couple. But I do want the rest of the commissioners to feel free to let us know if you've got questions that you want to ask as well.
And to be clear, we want to begin with you commissioners, not me, so
Oh,
please.
oh,
We
oh,
want to
we
hear
do.
from all of you.
Okay, this
so-
is really good.
So bring your questions, please, but also I echo, thank you both, and Chip, thank you for bringing your STAR team to present. Great stuff.
Anybody have any questions? Don't leave this, oh, good, good, good.
Agencies that you partner with today for our Black girls, some of the, like Impact, or what are some of the other agencies that you partner with today?
We currently partner with Impact for the CCMAP Summer Job Program. We also use Impact with our kinship providers as far as resource information in regards to caring for kids. But we do this year we serviced 100 kids for our summer job program, and Impact was our provider. They also provide case management, and they see the kids even after the employment. Their goal is for the youth to be self-sufficient, meaning they're making over $17 an hour. So we currently still have those 100 slots. As more kids move off, we add more.
What about, I'm sorry. What about private industries like financial institutions or some of these other ones? I mean, do they partner with you guys? Do they come out and say, hey, let's do a financial education program, or, you know, those type of activities or programs that they can offer to your, to our Black girls, or just the, you know, folks in general, the young kids in general?
Well, I'll talk about one that was actually in our summer job program. The PASS Foundation, we worked with over the summer. They provided not only job employment, but also educational services. Lots of different skills and trades. Our youth were able to receive certifications. 3D printing, CAD, many specific, what I want to say, technical areas. They also partner with I call it a think tank, but just something to get the kids creatively thinking. You can talk from your side in regards to like your mentoring program.
So we always partner or are always accessible for Rise Sister Rise to Impact with our mentors. We have a lot of people that sit on our advisory committees that bring different skill sets and have things going on with whether it be their employers, that they open up those opportunities. Our advisory committees are made up of committee members, our mentors, and then also just community people that they advise us, and so from their perspective, they bring that and offer different things and services to our kids.
My question was, how do you become a mentor or a partner for these girls?
So in order to be a mentor in our program, and again, we have several different mentor programs. We have our one-on-one mentor programs. We also have our crisis volunteers who aren't matched one-on-one with a specific child, but they are housed over at our intake department, which is a 24-hour operation. Their primary role is to help kids through that transition who are coming in to go out into the community to be placed when they're no longer able to be in their own homes. To do that, you would contact our agency, and then it's a process. You have to be 18 years and older, have transportation, and then we vet you through an assessment process based on, and which is the background check process. And then based on what you would want to do, whether that be the one-on-one mentoring, you would be linked according to the program that you're interested in. We have our friendship program, which services all children. We have our Malika and Simba programs, which are the gender and culturally specific programs for African American girls and boys. We have our College Bound program. And so based on which one, you would be linked with a coordinator for that particular program, and they would kind of take you through that process.
Thank you.
275-2690, sorry.
One more time.
I'm sorry. 614-275-2690. That's our volunteer department.
You mentioned that the kinship placements have doubled in the last 4 years. Do you have insights as to what accounts for that doubling?
I believe it's our efforts at the front door. Chip has committed, myself as well, to us trying to make sure that we achieve 50% of all initial custody kids coming in the front door in kinship placement. It was a reorganization. We developed a kinship department, which I currently run, to just do exactly that. When a kid comes in the care, instead of looking for a foster home, we look for kinship first.
Thank you.
I'll add on to that too. Part of those efforts in the beginning, and I think Raquel is absolutely correct with that front line, but it also starts when kids first come in the door. If we've never had contact with the family, and I was in the kinship department, I had the privilege before coming into this department, but it starts really with those initial conversations. Sometimes that initial conversation is the only opportunity that you get with a parent, and so as our frontline workers are meeting those families in that moment of crisis, when they first come to our agency, they're in a crisis moment, but it's important that you're having those conversations early on in case that initial conversation is the only one trying to gather that information about other relatives or families or friends, and sometimes ideally before you get to that point where you're looking at removal so that you have some of that information to draw on so that if that comes, then you're not kind of scrambling around.
Councilwoman.
Thank you. I want to just focus on the, when you were saying that the looking at the current quality of life of Black girls, and you see there are interruptions in these number of areas. And so just to give us an overview as to what are you seeing when girls present themselves or families present themselves to you, what do you see are some of the key issues that have brought them to this particular situation, brought you to your agency?
Okay. Now, I just want to make sure I'm clear about the question and as far as what they're being referred to our agency for.
Yes.
Okay. So any type of abuse or neglect or dependency. So abuse, of course, are acts of commission to a child. That can be physical abuse. It can be sexual abuse, some type of something done inflicted on a child, whereas neglect could be homelessness. It can be not being able to meet the basic needs, not being able to meet the medical needs of a child or the educational needs, or it can be more dependency. Maybe a parent has some mental health issues, something that's kind of not necessarily in their control. So we're seeing that those children are coming to us for those reasons. And so that impacts a child. We see them, of course, what we see come out, the behaviors that we see are not always what the family's dealing with, or there's always more to the levels of what they're dealing with. So it may present as a child being sleepy in school because they were up late or because so much was going on in their home. It could present as a significant change in grades, or it can present in a lot of different ways. And so we just have to kind of dig deeper, take that deeper dive to try to get at really what the core issues of the family are sometimes.
All right, and you also mentioned that 39% of the Black girls are currently being served by Children's Services. Can you just tell me what, are there obstacles or deterrents for girls, for these girls to be, adopted? Or what challenges are you facing?
A lot of the challenges, what I mentioned, though they have ties to their sibling, or they want to stay near a sibling. A lot of times what we see, if they are placed with their sibling, is they're in their parental role and they're not used to being a child or teen. So a lot of times you'll see conflicts between a foster parent and the oldest child because they're used to that parental role. And sometimes that means that they may have to move, unfortunately, depending on the severity of it. We do see a lot of anger coming in, when they're angry. They're not in their home, they're not with family, they may not be with siblings, they're not able to effectively communicate their feelings, their needs. We see a lot of those kids in group homes, in residentials, those not able to go into a foster home setting right away. Depression, issues with, they may not know who their father is, or may not know extended family members that they can reach out to. They may not have access to finding where their friends are. I'll just speak to yesterday. Yesterday was National Adoption Day, and we had a youth age 14, which she struggled with adoption. She knew her mother couldn't take care of her. Her mother has a significant mental health, homelessness, and things like that. But she was worried she didn't know where her mother was. So, during the hearing, although she said, I want to be adopted, I know this is where I should be, the minute the magistrate started talking about parental ties being severed, she broke down in tears. She's asking the judge, do you know where my parents are? So just wanting to know, they want to know what their family. So that usually is the barrier. And also, again, like I said, they don't want to be open to moving out of state. We find homes all across the nation. There's no geographical boundaries, no racial boundaries or anything when we're looking for permanency for a child. And some of those are not open. So it takes a lot of education, a lot of relationship building with the youth to get them even able to even see that there's something outside of foster care.
I'll give just another quick example, and it's funny, when we kind of started to put this together, Kim and I had the same, we went to the same family, the same child, but in our work, we see this over and over. There was a young girl who was ready to go to college, and so she had done the work, she had put in the work, she had been granted scholarships to go away to school. She was a phenomenal young lady. She had won some awards through our agency. She was a kind of a leader in her own right. But when it came time for her to go to college, she couldn't see past her responsibility to her siblings. She couldn't see past what's going to happen to them and who's going to be responsible for them. It's my responsibility. You know, parents were not in the picture. And so it was a really hard choice for her, where most of us are like, go to college, what do you mean? But for her, that was a really hard choice. And so it took some encouragement for her to really understand that the best thing that you can do for your siblings is to go and better yourself, so that when you come back to them, you have something positive to impart in them. But for her, those are tough decisions for our kids because of the loyalties to their families, and that's often a barrier.
Any other commissioner?
I'd like to say thank you for the work that you do. We recognize that it is an extremely heavy lift. Can you talk to the commission about the percentage of Black girls that age out of the system, and what services and supports you provide to them so that they can become active and productive citizens?
Well, I don't have a number for you of the percentage, but what I can tell you is what we offer. So any kid aging out of custody is eligible for post-emancipation services. What that includes is really it's a safety net, like many of us would have in what I call an average family. We assist with housing, educational needs, emergency needs. You know, as young adults, sometimes we mismanage our money. We also assist the youth with getting linked with the Bridge. I'm not sure if many of you are aware of what the Bridge is, a state program for eligible kids who age out of foster care. They provide services from age 18 also to 21. It could be a monthly stipend to pay for college tuition. It could be providing rent while you're still in a kinship home, or in your own apartment. They also offer case management services, linkages with mental health services as needed, any educational needs, GED programming, what other things that we, really anything. Whatever the need is, we try to assist the youth. We have many, our main office is next to the shelter. We have several youth who come in with babies, maybe homeless. Our first thing is to assess, are they eligible for programming, which one? And we do the emergency services up front. Trying to find housing, we have My Place, which is our transitional living place. We have about 12 units there that we look for kids who may not be eligible for the Bridges program, but it offers a safe net, whether you're just one person or with the child, while we get them either eligible for services or get them towards independence. Usually the stay is between 6 to 12 months. If a youth is progressing, we would never throw a youth out at that 12 month. We want to make sure that they're self-sufficient. We provide the programming there, again, independent living skills, parenting classes, educational services, linkages with alternative schooling for kids, and also work with our college-bound youth. We do college setup for every youth who goes to college that ages out of our custody to make sure that they have computer, refrigerator, microwave, all the necessary tools that they need for college. College pair packages, and also Impact with our summer job program. They also offer services to any kids that they're doing case management with. They will see them at college, ensure that their tuition is paid, and help through any difficulties that the youth have.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. So we have one more question. All right.
Kind of a quick question. One thing that's been fascinating with this commission is we found a wealth of institutions that are doing phenomenal work. But one thing that's come up over and over is under-resourced. I know you're a nonprofit, COSA's a nonprofit. We can always get more money. That's not the question I'm asking. Do you find yourselves have enough resources to accommodate the clientele, or do you have a waiting list of kids who need services? So can you accommodate everybody who knocks on your door and needs something, or is there a backlog?
Are we talking in particular to emancipation services or in general?
Everything you offer for the youth.
I would say that we are a resource-rich county
Okay, great.
agency. If there's a need, we find a way.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Now,
Well,
there may be wait lists for like mental health services,
Sure.
some things we can't control,
Sure.
but what we try to do is work creatively to decrease that wait list time. But funding usually is not an issue.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Do you need mentors?
Yes, ma'am. Always. And there's some information that, absolutely. There was some information that went around, I'll end with this. One thing that we do is we always need volunteers, and so that information is going around on December 5th from 6 to 8 at
Would you talk to in the mic?
Yes, ma'am. December 5th at Copious from 6 to 8, we have our Black Girl Magic program. And what that is it's our community ask. Our agency has a holiday wish program that we grant the holiday wishes of children in the community children that we are involved with in the community, with helping them to get Christmas gifts so that they wake up to something. Most of us in the room may or may not have got up on Christmas morning, and there are things for us. For our kids, that hasn't always been the case, and so we provide that for them through our Holiday Wish program. We service about 6,500 children a year, and we do that with the help of our community partners, the community, whether that be a little, single person or a big corporation. We do it with the help of community donors. And so what Black Girl Magic is it is our specific ask for culturally specific gifts for our young ladies of color that are involved in the agency. What we ask is that at that particular event, it's an opportunity to come together to fellowship, to celebrate Black girls, and to celebrate what they are and what they mean and who they are. And so we just ask that anybody who comes, please bring a culturally specific gift that they can identify with. Nothing better than waking up to a doll that looks like you or a book that has people that look like you. And so it just goes a long way to do something for their self-esteem. And that's our way to say, we're here for you, we believe in you, and we want to get them to a point where they believe in themselves, and that's our opportunity to do that.
Thank you very much.
For our Youth Advisory Council, we are currently looking for participants. So if you know any Black girls between the ages of 14 to 21, we would definitely like to have them participate. The number to contact is 614-341-6027, and the contact person is Derek Cobb.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very good, thank you. All right, moving along, our next presenter, is Natalie in the room? There you are, come on up. We're gonna have Natalie Thomas, who is the director at NIAP, and NIAP is the National Association of Youth Advocacy Program. I think I'm saying that correct, Natalie? So, okay, great. And she's going to do her presentation, and then we'll have question and answers after that. Thank you.
Wait for her to set up. Again, there are refreshments here in the spirit of not wasteful, not being wasteful. Please just help yourself. We have caffeine, hot caffeine, cold caffeine stuff, and snacks. Please help yourself. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you for inviting me here. I must start with a small confession, which is probably not a good idea, but I'm going to do it. Thank you. I am a little nervous, and I don't do nervous. And I was like, why do I feel this way? I love speaking in front of people. I live for this. And I realized that I was a little nervous because I think this is so deeply important. And I realized that this is really about who I was when I was much younger. And it's just not a normal presentation. Fundamentally, this is about my inner child. And so I got a little nervous, and maybe it's the kid in me that's a little jittery, so please excuse me if I'm a little off. But I am in good company, and I do appreciate that. And thank you guys for having me here. Again, my name is Natalie Thomas. I'm with the National Youth Advocate Program. We are a national organization. We're present in 7 states, and home base is actually here, Columbus, Ohio. NYAP has been around for 40 years, providing services to children and families. We've expanded out to neighboring states and as far south as Florida, which is where I moved here from. So as I was walking up and it was cold and it was a little rainy, and I'm thinking about the quality of lives for Black girls, I'm thinking, my quality of life right now. I'm very happy to be here, though, I will tell you that. So just a little bit about NYAP and the services that we provide. We do provide prevention, intervention, reunification, and permanency services. That's kind of the hub of the services that we provide. And extending out of that hub would be substance use, assessment and treatment, mental health assessment and treatment, family support services, adoption services, family engagement, and kinship services. We have a very strong commitment to working with children in their communities. We believe that communities are capable to care for their youth, that kids should be with their families. So we have a very strong emphasis on our kinship care and providing wraparound support services for youth in their communities and homes. We also have a centralized service reception center. One of the points of differences with our organization is that we are able to provide 24/7 access support with a live person. So for the individuals who are involved with services with our organization, if they are having a crisis, they're able to call our toll-free number and reach a live human being who's able to provide the support that they need. We're able to dispatch services out to their home if need be. And then we're also able to take referrals. So oftentimes if a youth needs to be referred from a local hospital or anywhere, we're able to take referrals and intakes 24/7, 365. Over the year 2017, we provided outpatient mental health services to 246 girls between the ages of 11 to 15 and 480 African American girls between the ages of 16 to 22 years old. So what can the Commission and the community do to improve the quality of life for Black girls? We think it's really important, as I mentioned earlier, to serve the family unit. And this is an important point because oftentimes we may work with an individual client, a young girl, a Black girl, and we make gains, but placing that young lady back in a home where others need support or services and not addressing the family unit doesn't create oftentimes for a sustainable situation. So for those of us, whatever it is we do, it's really important that we consider that family unit because oftentimes we see generational patterns that need to be addressed. And it's really not sustaining to isolate one person and say, okay, well, I'm gonna help you with your issue and everyone else just, you know, hang in there. So I really want to point out that the family unit is key in sustaining gains that are made with our clients. Strategic engagement of places of faith. I think that this is a community who historically knows how to heal itself. Because we've had to. There were times where there weren't a lot of resources, weren't a lot of options, and we've come a long way. And I work for an advocacy organization where we provide services. I'm the director of a center where we provide services, but I recognize that it takes a village, and it has been the village why so many of us have survived. And I do think that focusing on that village is important, and that includes places of faith, and it could be spiritual as well. So any particular religious entity, I think, would be helpful in bringing that wraparound service. Creating safe and accessible community spaces. The Center for Adolescents and Families is such a space where we have had teenage girls in this demographic who are on run, they don't want to be home. Somehow they found a way to take a bus and they walk into my center and I look at them and I go, "What are you doing?" I mean, welcome. What's going on? "I don't have anywhere to go." Oh, well then really welcome. I think the more community resources we have in terms of safe spaces where they can drop in, oftentimes this demographic, they're really not complying exactly with appointments. "Oh, I have a 4:30 appointment over at such and such place. I need to leave 10 minutes early to," no. That's not what we're seeing. These are young women where sometimes they're in a position, they're spontaneously deciding they want to be somewhere else. And in that moment, they've got to think, where can I get to? Where do I want to go? Who's going to go with me? We need to have spaces where they can just show up. Just show up. It's not the most convenient for a provider who has a schedule and my therapist, but the truth is there need to be spaces where they can drop in and they can show up, because that's what they do with our space. And we welcome them and we're happy. But they need more spaces, and they need more spaces in different communities so that they don't have to come across town. Wherever they are, they can go. How am I doing so far? Okay. Still got time. All right, I appreciate it. Early intervention services. I recognize as a licensed clinician that it is important to use evidence-based practices, practices that have been studied and evaluated rigorously by my peers, and I do respect it. I do think there is something to be said, however, for catching those early warning signs and intervening before it gets to a certain point. Where I'm from, we say prevention is better than cure. I understand that that is not always the most desirable funding logic, but with the deepest respect, I will say the earlier the better. Academic support resources. A lot of our girls oftentimes are falling behind in school due to social stressors, maybe stressors in home. And we need to be able to have enough resources academically to keep them up to par on grade level and priming them for future success. Mental health education and literacy resources. Literacy resources meaning I think it's important to be able to give our girls the language to describe what they are going through with some level of deeper accuracy. We have young people who don't have the vocabulary, and so they will say things like, "Well, I'm just like my mom. I have anger problems, and that's just who I was born that way. I've been angry since I was 1. How do you know that? You don't know you were angry since you were 1. But they say it as if it is fact, that this is who I am. Or they overhear something about, this is what I'll hear. "Well, I'm just bipolar. I'm bipolar." How they are describing themselves, one, we must help them distinguish between their symptoms and who they are. They are not their symptoms. And I suspect that if we were able to, as a community, help with their mental health literacy, they would be able to use vocabulary not only to more accurately express what they are going through, but to be able to present themselves as who they truly are and make that distinction between what they're experiencing in a moment. At the center, we would be so happy to have an abundance of applicants for social work and therapist positions because there's so much that we want to do. We need more practitioners. And we need more practitioners who look like the individuals they are serving. Everyone with the right training and the right heart and the right intention can support our girls. But visibility does matter. Representation does matter. And I will tell you when people say, oh my gosh, how do you do that for a living? Aren't you, how do you sleep at night? Because every time a young girl comes into my building and asks me, where's the director? Who runs this place? And I'm able to say, how may I help you? Usually the first thing they go to is my hair. And then they ask me, how did I get the job? It is so unfamiliar. It's so foreign. I've been told I look a little younger than my age by some. And so it's just them being able to see someone who they can relate to. I don't want to be that special or unique. So if we could find a way to invest in practitioners of the healing arts, because I'm not saying specifically psychology, specifically social work, I mean any healing arts. It's really important, and so that would be very helpful. Continuing this conversation and holding us accountable, and by us I mean all of us. I want to be held accountable. I want to be able to hold the commission accountable. The girls deserve it. And by accountability, it's not just the goals that we set. I would dare say, let's hold each other accountable to model the things that we want for the girls. We want them to live good quality lives. Let's make sure we are caring for ourselves. Let's make sure that we are nurturing ourselves, resting when we need to rest, finding ways to vent in a healthy way where we can show that Black girls do experience anger and a range of emotions. And it doesn't mean anything other than we are human. And there's a way to express that, and we're entitled to the range. We're entitled to that human range. And so I think if we hold each other accountable, not just for the goals, but for ourselves and how we are doing, then we'll continue to be good examples for our girls. And so I'm asking the commission to hold me to that. Excuse me as I hold you guys to that. And we just live that life, walk the walk, talk the talk. And I really hope I'm on cue with what the commission was expecting this evening, because I deeply, deeply appreciate this opportunity. You can reach us at 1-877-NIAP-CAN. Our toll-free number is 24/7-365, and someone's standing by to take your referral. We're also on social media. Thank you to the City of Columbus, City Council. Councilmember Tyson, thank you very much. Thank you to everyone on the commission. Is it question and answers now? Is open to the floor?
First of all, Dr. Thomas, thank you very much for that excellent presentation. I appreciate the sincerity and absolutely appreciate your commitment to all people, including, of course, Black girls.
Thank you.
I want to open it up to our commissioners. Are there any questions for any of you for our esteemed speaker?
I had one. Just when you were talking about resources that were needed, could you just go more in depth as far as increased academic support in resources, what that would be?
Sure. Academic support can range anything from tutors who are able to go out into the communities where, again, it's making sure there are no barriers to accessing the resources. So anything that we can do that's community-based would be very helpful. And so if we had, let's say, tutors who we were able to mobilize and go out into homes or to go out to community spaces and meet with young girls and provide small group support so that they are able to stay on grade level, to be able to advance, that would be a great resource.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That you serve in the states are very heavily affected by the opioid crisis. So can you give us an idea on how that's affected the work that you do over the past couple of years?
Sure, thank you for that question. The impact of the epidemic has been seen, when I talk about being able to serve the family, that's a big one. We have caregivers who may be struggling with substance use issues, and what the young person is dealing with in their home. Excuse me? Oh, okay. Okay, no click. So essentially, we're seeing more kids coming into care because caregivers are struggling with substance use issues. So if we're able to support the family as a whole, where we're treating the caregivers, the people in the home, as well as the youth for their needs, that would be most helpful. So we are seeing more kids coming into care. We're seeing kids being exposed to substances at younger ages. We're seeing a faster deterioration in terms of their ability to function. Yeah.
Any other questions? Tyson?
Yes. Hi, Natalie.
Hello.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And so, can you share with me, how do the girls find you? You're serving this past year almost over 700 girls,
Yeah.
and how do they find you in our community?
So a lot of the girls we serve, we have a really fantastic partnership with Franklin County Children's Services. And so our care management department that serves a lot of the families, they will refer to us, but they're able to find us. We accept any community referrals, so they can come to us by either calling. We will accept the referral over the phone. They can go on our website. They can find us on social media. We also provide services that are school-based. So right now we have therapists who will actually, if the school will allow us and they'll give us space, we'll actually house clinicians in the school so that way kids aren't losing much academic time. When families come to pick up the kids, we're right there. So we have school social workers who will refer to us. So again, by calling our toll-free number 24/7, they're able to access us.
And you're working in the Columbus City Schools?
So right now, so the services that we provide, we go into the Columbus City Schools. The school where we're housed right now is a charter school. Mhm. But we're more than happy to go into any of the Columbus City schools.
And so my last question will be, do you still have capacity to take on more young girls?
So the answer is yes, and it's a soft yes, though, to be perfectly honest. We do have capacity. However, we do need more clinicians. We absolutely need more clinicians. There is greater need oftentimes for our girls than there are those who are qualified to provide those services. When our HR department goes out to OSU and sets up a booth and says, okay, all the graduating social workers come this way, it takes a while in terms of numbers to see, again, that representation. I mean, we will take anyone who is qualified and caring and capable, but we definitely need to find a way to attract talent.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
First, thank you so much for sharing the phrase of mental health literacy. I'm going to use that a lot and give you credit for it every time, so thank you for that.
Oh, goodness. Okay, sure.
Second, it'd be helpful to know other partners that you're working with on the regular in addition to Franklin County Children's Services, if you could share some of those.
Sure. So in addition to Franklin County Children's Services, we will again engage with any schools that with whom we have a partnership. We'll say, okay, you guys need support services, we will go in, and that the schools it's individualized, so it just depends on which school needs that support. We do work with the local YMCA so that our teens are able to, going back to talking about needing community spaces, so we will work with the Y and making sure that our youth have access to recreational spaces.
Oh, go ahead.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is yeah. Oh, sure. Hello. My name is Mikayla. I'm a third year at OSU. I'm a social work major. And this is kind of a selfish question, but I'm really wondering, like, specifically what areas are you looking clinicians for? And so, like, are you looking more for mental health clinicians, or is it just kind of like holistic? You know, you need everyone.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, like, what areas are you looking?
Thank you for that question. Definitely not a selfish question at all, because you're needed. Congratulations on being in your third year. I'm going to give you my business card. You see how well this is going already? Awesome. So the need varies. I will tell you, there isn't one particular area where we're saying, no, we're fine. Thank you, everyone. We're packed. We need caseworkers. We need therapists. We need behavioral support staff. We need just about anyone who is able to get through that program and show up and do the work and serve. And so there's a range, depending on what type of service you want to provide, depending on the funding source, things and such of that nature. But there's work for individuals who have just a bachelor's degree. That's fine, that's acceptable. There's service that can be done. If you were to go on and get a license, dependent license, LSW, LPC, which is licensed social worker, licensed counselor, that's fine. And then if you go all the way and get your master's, and then master's and license, there is work for just about everyone. So I would stay the course. This is a very wonderful, wonderful city in which to work. There's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of places waiting on folks like you to graduate. So just stay the course, go for it. And depending on what your interests are, there are definitely avenues that can be taken. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker is coming up, Mr. Lamar Peoples from Star House. And Natalie, we have to apologize that Lamar's clicker started moving early. That's okay. Got it? All right, good. All right, thank you.
Let me make sure I get that. Okay. Thank you all for having me here today. I want to, go through the normal process and say thank you, Councilmember Tyson, commissioners, and the guests here. First thing I want to say is that I count it a privilege to be able to speak about Black girls and the issues they face, and represent the organization Star House and talk more about some of the work we're doing and some of the data that we're collecting and some of the challenge we face and how we can work together to make lives for Black girls better. I'll skip some slides as I'm going through and add more essential data to others. So bear with me on that. And then as I end, please remind me to make sure that I provide each and every one of you with some tools that we've created to make sure that if you ever are coming in contact with youth experiencing homelessness, you can be an advocate and connect them to our resources. All right, Star House. So we are a so by the way, I'm sorry, my name is Lamar. My name is Lamar Peoples, and I have the great honor of serving as the Outreach and Partnerships Director for Star House. It's self-explanatory in some ways, so responsible for all aspects of outreach and figuring out ways we can develop more strategies that will get more youth into our center, and then partnerships as far as almost 100 partnerships that we have, 15 on site, and then over 60 that our clinical therapists and case managers are referring people to. So there we go. Star House is, our mission is to provide youth experiencing homelessness with a safe respite from the streets and connect them to a chance to thrive. I'll talk more about how we're doing that as I move forward in the presentation. I do want to go over a bit of our history. We've been around for around going on 13 years at this point. And in 2006, there was not a lot of talk at that point around youth homelessness. It was, we are the opportunity city. And at that time, we were the 15th largest city in the nation. And our founder, Dr. Natasha Sleznick, who's a leading researcher around youth homelessness, she said, there's no way that there's no homeless youth in Central Ohio. There has to be a problem there. And so she moved here all the way from New Mexico to begin to conduct the research. And so if you can see that little house there, that's where it all began. And there was a capacity of around 25 youth at that time. And so as you can see, as we move through in 2015 with this growth, we decided to move to a new facility, which we now are in a 14,000 square foot facility, and the capacity has not been reached, but we are serving more and more guests every year. Another important thing to mention is that in 2017, we transitioned from being under OSU and became an independent agency. And that allows us more independence to determine policy and procedures, seek funding opportunities, et cetera. But we do continue to have best practices in a partnership with OSU. We have researchers on site who are constantly collecting data around certain issues like infant mortality and smoking and others. So that's some history. Some of our resources include food and an open kitchen. Of course, we provide mental health therapy and case management, housing assistance, legal aid advice, et cetera. So I want to talk a bit about the experience of Black girls in our organization, and say that, as you can see up there, they're survivors, mothers, they're students. People are surprised when they find out that most of our guests, and I can't speak about the specific data on that, but if you're interested, I can connect you to our data and grants manager who can speak about. But what I do know is that the majority of our youth who are coming into our center are high school graduates and even have some college education. So that's a stigma around youth homelessness, is that, you know, they're not educated, and some of them are. And so we'll speak more about some of the challenges then. If it's not education, what is it? They have jobs, they're in recovery, and they're restored citizens. So how do we reach, and so let me talk a bit about the experience. So, and these are the experiences of Black girls without a permanent place to call home. So Star House is doing amazing work in that 69% of all women who come into Star House are African American. And we serve 14 through 24-year-olds. So you can imagine that, and the average age is 21. So we're seeing, you know, a large population, over half of our population are Black girls. 55%. And I'll move, let me go into this slide. So if you can see, African American guests served, the average age being 21. In 2008, this year alone, and we're not even finished yet, we've served 362 Black girls. 55% of them were in foster care. 55% of the girls that we've served this year were in foster care. 32% are LGBTQ. 78% have been pregnant. 78% have been pregnant. 60% have children of their own. And 25% have been incarcerated. Some more numbers, 34 are employed, and 47% are actively seeking employment. Some outcomes, 77 have, and this is after 3 or more months at Star House. So they're coming in, and go back a little bit. So our evidence-based service model, we are a drop-in center. And so people often wonder, well, what does that mean? Do you have bedding? And so the answer is no, we don't have bedding. But there are places for youth to rest, couches, chairs, et cetera. And so the point is that how are we, you know, reaching these girls, and how are they, you know, how are 77% obtaining housing, and how are 34% employed, et cetera. There's this basic understanding that street outreach is important, direct engagement, going to the places where youth are hanging out, such as soup kitchens and tent sites and libraries and rec centers and high schools and middle schools. Going to these places, making the staff aware of Star House, but also making sure, using that trauma-informed approach to make sure that, you know, youth are aware. They are then, you know, we have transportation resources that we give the youth when we're out there connecting them to get them to Star House. And so once they're there, another reason why we don't have bedding is our research proved that low barriers to access is really important when serving a vulnerable population. And so by not having bedding, we don't have to ask them for identifiers when they come in. They are able to self-report. We don't ask for an ID. There's literally a 20-minute process where they come in, they say I'm homeless, and they meet with our youth advocates who are out on the floor every day, building connections, those trusting relationships there. But they're getting their basic needs met. Again, there's showers, there's a laundry facility, there's an open kitchen, there's clinical therapists there, there's partnerships with Southeast and the Ohio Guidestone providing mental health and connections to medical resources with Nationwide Children's Hospital and Primary One Health, enrolling people in Medicaid, and then also partnerships with Molina Health and Buckeye Health and CareSource, the major Medicaid providers, so that youth, once they enroll in those programs, can then go and learn about all the resources that are available to them. Two other important things are the trusting relationships and the stabilizing resources, which I talked about, but the trusting relationships are so important. What we're finding is that our youth, these black girls are coming in, they've been victims of human trafficking. And I'll list some data around that. But they are victims of human trafficking. They have been disconnected from family because of their sexuality. They are kicked out when they tell their parent that they're pregnant. And so for a lot of them, they've lost faith in adults and in the system. And so we understand by building trusting relationships, we can begin to understand them and who they are, and then connect them to those stabilizing resources. So it's the street outreach component, it's the basic needs, it's the trusting relationships, and then it's the stabilizing resources. As you can imagine, being, unemployed, how are they becoming homeless, right? Is what we can talk about. And so what we see is underemployment, not being able to, with underemployment comes the inability to afford rent and pay utilities. They suffer with evictions, and then ultimately domestic violence is another big thing. So I want to talk a bit about the ACEs scale of trauma. ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And when we look at the data as far as the number of youth who are aging out of foster care, I want to say it's 55% of our guests who have come in this year have aged out of foster care, and they're experiencing trauma. When we look at that ACEs score on that scale of 1 to 10, youth aging out of foster care are an 8.5. And so you can imagine the amount of trauma that they're going through, and understanding trauma. It's trauma like the emergency room trauma, but there's also that mental and physical trauma that they've been through that impacts how they interact with the community at large. And so you can imagine if you've always been neglected, you've always been abused, and then you're at a job and the boss isn't having a good day and they come down on you and your trigger is triggered, and then you go off on the boss and you lose your job. So we're seeing how trauma is impacting the black girl's ability to maintain employment, which ultimately leads to homelessness. So again, 55% of African American girls who aged out of foster care, from that number I spoke about, the 362 from 2018. Starhouse works with partners. We've heard Bridges here today, but that is an awesome program, because what we see is that youth, once you're 18, you're kind of thrown out on the streets from foster care, and it's like, find your way. And so Starhouse partners with organizations that give them a chance to thrive beyond 18 years of age. And so Bridges, Ohio supports former foster youth as they build a bridge towards a brighter future with housing, employment, and more. Women who have children, mothers are being kicked out of their parents' house once they tell the parent that they are pregnant, and that leads to instabilities with the family. So one thing we're seeing is that 60% of all girls who come into Star House have children. And so we understand that in Franklin County, the infant mortality rate is high. And so we've partnered with the city of Columbus to provide resources around the ABCs of safe sleep, pack and plays, and then staff training, making sure our staff are being aware of the way that babies are being placed in those pack and plays, and then providing oversight for the mothers so that they can begin to keep their babies safe. So I want to talk about more on how we can provide supports to our Black girls. One thing is to think about how there was a study done by the Obama Foundation that said 32% of all African American girls in the nation are more likely, and this is considering the fact that African Americans total in the nation 14% of the population, but 32% of Black girls are more likely to encounter the criminal justice system and get stiffer penalties for minor mishaps. And so one thing the commission can do to begin to sort of break down some of those barriers is to help young Black women expunge nonviolent crimes from their records. And this will help increase their likelihood of getting good paying jobs. Another thing could be to focus on the needs of Black women in an effort to solve the eviction crisis in our community. We can also remember our LGBTQ youth and provide them with better supports, improve access to childcare. Young mothers who want to work or go get an education or advance their career need a place where their children can go and have substantial development and care while they're doing that. And then we can help ensure that justice for African American girls who are victims of human trafficking is served. There was a statement made where perpetrators of human trafficking have said that white women give you more money, but Black girls give you less jail time. And so if we can think about that as we are looking to change our criminal justice system, they know that the likelihood of them being, the consequences of them selling Black women over white women is going to be less because our criminal justice system has that implicit bias towards Black girls. And so I did want to go on and talk about how Star House wants to continuously improve our work around helping Black girls thrive. Cultural competency is really important. We understand that, America is a country of different beliefs and cultures and religions. And so making sure that our staff is aware of those differences and celebrating them is one thing we'll continue to work on. outreach and recruitment, specifically looking for opportunities where we can outreach to Black girls, and then also recruiting staff that are Black, simply put, and that can speak to those specific needs of Black girls. Community partnerships are important. Again, I talked about bridges. I talked about the City of Columbus Safe Sleep Initiative, but also organizations like New Directions, which is a women-led organization that is seeking to connect girls of all colors, but specifically Black girls, to advancement in careers, et cetera. And then one thing that I want to say as I wrap up is making sure that all staff are trauma informed. Our CEO, Ann Bischoff, saw a need with making sure we connect guests to financial resources while on site. So we created a workforce development program called StarWorks, which incorporates a trauma-informed care component, as well as partnerships with Wild Tiger Teas to do screen printing, create floral arrangements that'll go on the tabletops of coffee shops, et cetera. And youth can come in, make those have those production opportunities and get paid right there on the spot, which puts money in their pockets and helps them prevent themselves from getting into situations that will have longer standing consequences. So as I wrap up, sorry about that, together we can prevent chronic homelessness into adulthood for Central Ohio youth. How can you help? I remembered that I asked you all to remind me how you all can help. And so if you're interested, one thing we found when we were doing outreach is that it's kind of a bit awkward on both ends for somebody to walk up and say, hey, are you homeless? Here's a place you can go. And so understanding trauma and how that can impact a person, and then understanding that people aren't as trusting as we, especially, Black girls struggling with the societal problems that we have. We've created these outreach cards that are literally business card style, but it has all the information, basic information about Star House on there. And what I found is it's so easy if I'm in a public space and I notice a young Black girl or I notice a youth, that I can simply side that card to them, not make a big deal about it. And when they're ready to get connected, they know where the place is and they have the information. So anybody interested in grabbing a couple of those, we also found that community members keep them in their pockets, keep them in their purses and their wallets. And so it gives you that opportunity whenever you're in a situation and you encounter a homeless youth, you can literally connect them to a life-saving resource such as Star House. Also have brochures for those interested in learning more about how they can get involved with volunteer opportunities, and business cards if you need more information. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peoples. I've been really interested in Star House and actually had planned to come visit this week, so I will get with you. Any questions? Any thoughts? Yeah, oh yeah, Michael.
Lamar, my friend, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. As proud as ever to represent Star House through our work and support all of you. I wanted to make a quick comment on the criminal record sealing, a suggestion that you made for all of us. I learned this last week. A new law went into place that was signed by Governor Kasich in June that vastly expands the number of people that are eligible for record sealing. Cincinnati City Council did something that I'm sure we can emulate across our community up here, where they hosted a legal clinic where people could come in and find out if they were eligible under this new law. This is something that we can do, so I'm delighted that you made that recommendation, but It dramatically expands the number of people that can have their records sealed, an unlimited number of misdemeanors and up to 5 nonviolent felonies. That's a dramatic change from what has been the case in Ohio for the last several decades.
Thank you. Looks like a community member. Sure.
Does it still allow for you to donate clothing and stuff to Star House? Because I know that's something that can occur over there and it's been done before.
Yeah.
So can individuals be able to still come over to the facility and bring clothing that they no longer can for the teenagers and things?
Yeah, so Monday through Friday from 9 until 1 are our drop-off hours, and then, or 9 until 12, I'm sorry, and then 1 to 4. Monday through Friday, you can simply just come and drop off donations. I will say that we are in need of men's clothing. A lot of people don't think about that aspect, as well as larger sizes. So think about 3X and up kind of sizes as well.
Thank you. I think Councilmember Tyson had a question.
Sure.
Lamar, thank you for being here. My question is, so when the youth come to Star House and they are in need of a housing, so tell me what the process is for them to be able to get, how do you connect them with the resources for housing?
Yeah, so we're so grateful that we have clinical therapists on site. And so we actually have 2 at the moment. We're hiring, because we are 24/7, so we're hiring a 3rd shift clinical therapist at the moment, as well as 2 case managers. And so that will greatly expand the capability of our therapists and their staff to be able to connect youth to those housing resources. I know that there are several out there, such as CMHA and others, and National Church Residences. And so literally it's up to the youth. We, again, believe in low barriers. We don't have any requirements. And so if a youth is ready to obtain housing, they'll go to a clinical therapist, and that therapist will open up a case plan for them and begin to work with them to make sure it's we do believe in housing first, but we also want to make sure that they have those basic needs and understanding of what all is required to maintain a household. So like a livable wage job, et cetera. So it's up to the youth. When they're ready, they can connect to our therapists, who then can make referrals to various entities that provide housing.
Just to follow up on that, so at that particular time, so those youth could be couch surfing at places, they could have just left their homes for a day, and so the reality is they may not go immediately into housing. So they may just, again, go back into the community because they cannot, of course, as you mentioned, cannot stay at Star House. So do you help link them up with family and friends until they're either are going back home if they have with their parents, or are you linking them up to other agencies like the Center for Healthy Families who have teenage girls, since you're saying there are young women that may need services, since the number 60% of them have children, just trying to get a better understanding for the commission if they're just, because it's really a drop-in center. So what happens?
And so I want to be, let me clarify a little bit about the drop-in center. It is a 24/7 drop-in center. Youth are allowed to be up on site for at least 12 hours. And so, for instance, in that case you mentioned, like they go back out into the community. I want to say that the Center for Healthy Families actually conducted some research with us early this year, which allowed us to be able to have a better snapshot of the issues around Black girls. So we do partner with organizations like the Center for Healthy Families and others to connect youth back to the community, as well as to opportunities that prevent them from being out on the streets with their babies.
I think this might be the last question. What do you think is happening at Star House that so many Black girls feel comfortable enough to go there and keep coming back?
Yeah, so I think it has a lot to do with the fact that it's there. You know, we are really the only drop-in center for homeless youth.
Okay.
In the capacity in which we operate in the nation, to an extent. The only 24/7 research-based drop-in center. In the country. There's other drop-in centers, but none of them have the sort of capacity in which we operate. So we have the New Day Center in Roanoke and others throughout the country. But I think the fact that we're there, and also back to those trusting relationships, our staff is constantly going through training for competency around how to deal with various types of populations, et cetera. And so I think when they come in there, you know, and our staff is very diverse too. And I think just knowing that there's a place where babies are welcome and that mothers can wash their clothes and that they can connect to a youth advocate who's also a Black woman, and have those conversations that are unique to that population. It's about the building, I think it's the trusting relationships, the fact that we're there, and that we're constantly growing around our competency for that particular population.
I appreciate that. Yes.
Are you finding girls telling other girls, Black girls telling other girls? Is that how girls are coming? And have you done any research?
Yeah, so every week we get our weekly report, and it sort of gives us a snapshot of how youth are being connected. And to be honest, every single week, more youth are connected by other youth referrals than any other source. And so we're figuring out how we can, without exploiting our guests, you know, equip them, just like we're equipping the public and ourselves with ways that we can be more trauma-informed around outreach. How do we do that for our guests? So we are finding that other guests, through word of mouth, are connecting other counterparts.
Thank you very much.
Lamar, thank you. And I just want to again go back to the previous presenter with Natalie, because they also have, it may not be exactly Star House, but certainly the 24/7 referrals for young people also. So we seem to have maybe two resources that we know of that we've heard today that will have opportunities for young people to be able to get immediate services. There may be some differences in what they're getting at each facility, but certainly there are places for our young people to go. So thank you.
Yep.
As you know, an important part of this commission is to listen to experts. So for the past few meetings, we brought in experts from different fields to share with us kind of their practice and the data and the stuff they're seeing. But another important part of this commission is to actually do its own set of research. And in particular, hearing from the actual target population, i.e. our Black girls. And so with that, we've hired Thoughtwell, and they're going to give us a robust update on the great research they've done from their studies and this listening sessions. And so we have both Dr. Butler and Ms. Zwicky, who both from Thoughtwell are going to share give us an update on their findings. Thank you so much.
Awesome. So I'll talk a little bit about the survey portion that we've been discussing at length over the past few months. And then Becky will talk to you about the progress that we've made with the focus groups. So we had a target of, or we have a target because the survey is still live until November 26th. Okay, so if you have people who you'd like to refer, it will be live until 11:59 p.m. on November 26th. And our target is 375 Black girls. We are already at 326 completions. And I do want to highlight how phenomenal this is. People hate taking surveys, okay? So it is due to the hard work of some of the people on the team, especially jail, I would say, and or partners, the people, the schools in the community, the nonprofits that have partnered with us to get girls in rooms to take, voluntarily take these surveys. So we're at 326, and of that 326, an estimated 213 are directly related to or one of our partner organizations. So we really do appreciate all the effort that has gone into, getting girls to see the importance of this project and giving them an opportunity to engage. Again, the survey will close on November 26th, so I would encourage everyone to continue to rally the troops so that we can get as many responses as we possibly can. And then once the survey closes and we start analyzing data, then we will have some more substantial updates to give you on that.
Yes, and then in terms of the focus groups, we've had 4 sessions so far. We talked to one group of 11 to 14-year-olds, another group of 15 to 18-year-olds, and then a couple of groups that ranged from about 15 to 22. And that was a total of 30 girls and young ladies, and that was our target. We were hoping to have about 8 to 12 in each of the focus groups, so we were right on with that, so that's been great. And like LaTanya said, we won't have a full set of results until we're done looking at the survey and all the focus group data together, but I did want to mention 2 things from the focus groups that I thought were really interesting and pertinent to what we heard today. The first is a lot of the girls talked about mental health literacy. They did not use that phrase, but they definitely talked about, I hear my grandma's bipolar, but I don't know what that means. We don't know what mental health is. We don't know why it's important. So definitely something we're hearing again today. And then the other thing is we asked the girls to describe themselves. And almost all of the girls said either they were smart or intelligent. So that was fantastic to hear.
Any questions?
Of the surveys that have been completed so far. Sorry. Of the surveys that have been completed so far, do you have a sense of perhaps missing areas of representation? So are you in need of older girls, girls from a particular socioeconomic markers? Can you talk to us about how we might target our additional outreach efforts?
That's an excellent question. And no, I do not, because we have not analyzed the data yet. So the essence of what we've put a lot of effort into making sure that we had enough and that they were from valid sources, but I have not. And I've looked at the age breakdown and all of that, but not sufficiently to say, okay, we need more upper income respondents yet. But I can get that to you, and if anybody is interested in that, we definitely can get that to you in short order.
Any other questions?
Is anybody, well, let me ask this, is anybody else interested in that question? Because maybe we can coordinate sending that out. We can give some initial demographic information.
And we didn't ask specifically about income because we didn't think most of the girls, especially at the younger age spectrum, would know their parents' income, but we asked questions about their parents' professions that will act as a proxy for that information.
Right. So that will take a bit of translation, but we can work on having that.
That this group is aware of that would like to get involved, that we can reach out to them to make sure that they can get the survey link, please let us know, because as Dr. Butler and Becky stated, the survey will remain live until the end of the 26th at 12 11:59 that is. And so we are definitely not closed to any place else. You know, we are constantly reaching out. Jill, who could not be here today, she is constantly reaching out on a daily basis. Some of you have probably got various methods of having outreach to her. And so if it's duplicative, you know, we apologize, but this work is so crucial to us. So if there's anyone in the room, any group that you think we have not heard from, or you may not even be aware, because as Dr. Butler stated, they have not begun to analyze the data yet, so it's very important that if there are other agencies, other facts, any facts in the community, any locations, any sorority members, and we do also have more groups that are scheduled. We're working with Judge Gill to make sure that we get young ladies who are in the juvenile detention. We already had some girls to take some of the surveys before. We still have a large population of Columbus City schools that will take the test between the 19th and the 26th. So that number that you heard does not include all of the outreach that has been done for Columbus City schools. We still have a lot of other smaller groups that are taking the test. And for example, we have the young ladies from Awana Funzi, which is the African American Black social work group that's on the College of OSU. So we still have segments of the population that are still actively involved in taking this survey. We don't want you to assume it is closed. We don't want you to assume that we don't need your work. And so we'd love to double this number. Actually, we'd love to triple it if we could. And so please make sure you reach out to us. If you don't have Dr. Butler or Thoughtwell's information or Becky's information, please reach out to myself, Pat Lyons. Stay around. I'll see you at the end of the meeting, and or Jill Frost. Thank you again.
And I just want to add, first of all, I want to thank Thoughtwell for their diligence in this work. And for those of you not kind of in the weeds and data, already having over 300 sample size 300 is great in terms of looking for significance for what we're trying to find. And as was mentioned, we're not even close to being done. So that's great. No. And the second piece, in terms of your call, Dr. Lyons, in terms of getting our help, without kind of unblinding yourself from the data, if we could get a distribution, because if it turns out we are missing kids 16 to 18, and we can then push hard in the last 10 days to try to get that population. Right. So without looking at the data, just looking at the numbers, back to Dr. Smooth's question, that would be great. But I think this is tremendous, and we're only November 15th, so great job.
And the last time I spot checked that, we seem to be having a pretty equal distribution, but I don't want to give you a final answer and then have to retract. So, I would like to look and give you something more official before.
I would also add the number is incredibly impressive because this survey is, 80 questions long? And we are asking very young girls to take it. So we wanted to get a lot of information about quality of life of Black girls in Columbus, and we're going to have a lot of information about that.
Yeah, great. All right, well, thank you very much.
Yes. All right. So as we heard from our very first meeting, that we do have a speaker slip. So we have an individual who wants to share some comments with the commission before we adjourn. And I'm going to ask Ms. Diana O'Garo to come and share her comments with the commission. And normally we give a speaker around 3 minutes. And so we will just be mindful of that. We don't want to cut you off, but be mindful that we, so Ms. O'Garo, before you start, you have a presentation, a slide. I'm gonna, 2 slides, okay. Our co-chair, Fran Frazier, wants to do an intro before Ms. Guerrero does her presentation. Fran.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that Ms. O'Garo spoke at a monthly Rise Sister Rise meeting to talk to us about evictions of young girls between 18 and 25. And the presentation on Monday was so compelling that I asked her if she would do public testimony today.
Everyone. As Ms. Fran mentioned, my name is Deanna O'Garo, and I am an employee with Community Mediation Services of Central Ohio. First, let me just explain what mediation is. Mediation is where a mediator gets two parties together to resolve an issue. We're not attorneys and we are not advocates. Our main primary goal is to get both parties to have win-win. In my case, what I do is I am a eviction court mediator, and I'm also a workshop coordinator. And I pulled some data from what I've collected so far, January of this year to September 30th. So at court, we have serviced 986 eviction cases. Of that amount, 622 were women, and of that amount, 102 were young ladies between the ages of 18 and 24 years old. The ages of 19 and 22, 45 of these young ladies were pregnant. In the office, throughout that time, we had 45 young ladies between the ages of 19 and 22 came into the office as a walk-in, and we've taken over 1,800 calls. And we've educated 227 youths in the community in regards to house instability, as well as homelessness prevention. Now, why those numbers are important is 59% of the total number of 986 are African American women. That's a huge number. In Franklin County, African American women makes up about 24% of the population, but 70% of the homelessness population. That doesn't even make sense to me. 24 to 70, but that's a huge, huge number. And so what our organization do, especially at court, is we have two plans. We do what is called a pay and stay arrangement, and we have a move out arrangement. Our primary focus is to have that eviction filing dismissed from the person's record. Now, keep in mind, evictions in Ohio goes nowhere. It stays on that person's rental history for life. Even if it ends up as a judgment on their credit report and then falls off after 7 years, that filing stays on the municipal court side for the rest of their life. And of the 986, we have helped 519 women stay in their home by doing this pay and stay arrangement. We have helped 355 negotiate a great exit strategy to where that eviction gets dismissed, but they get additional time to move out. I broke it down a little bit further into age groups. So if you can see the numbers, between the age of 18 and 19, we have served 16 young ladies. Between the age of 20 and 22, we have served 42. Between the ages of 23 and 24, we have served 44 young ladies. So if you were to average that, we are serving about 10 young ladies between the ages of 18 and 22, and I'll say 12 up to 24, to either prevent an eviction on their background or navigate how to get out of the home and have that dismissal on their record filed. So why should these numbers be important to us? One, evictions keep rising every year. There are more and more money that's being placed into financial assistance and everything, but there is one major part that we've noticed that is missing. The money is there to help with rental assistance. The part that's missing on the preventative side, however, is the educational part. Our young ladies are at a point where they're either now getting into a home of their own where their names are on that lease, but they really do not know how to navigate. They do not know what their rights are as a tenant. They do not know what the landlord's rights and responsibilities are. Besides not paying rent, the highest and the most amount of eviction that we're seeing are actually lease violations. And that simply means they're refusing to pay their rent because maintenance are not taken care of. And in Ohio, unfortunately, maintenance, rent, two different court issues. And at court, landlord, the only thing a judge asks you is, are you still living in the home? Do you still have the keys? And did you receive a 3-day notice? We're having an average of over 400 evictions every week. And how much I can tell you that eviction is a business, unfortunately, it really is. We have one particular attorney who have, on an average day, 50 cases. His attorney fee is $300 per case. That's $15,000 a day, $75,000 a week, $3.9 million a year. So at the end of the day, whether or not that eviction is granted or dismissed, he or she's getting paid. So eviction is a business, and what overcomes eviction is knowledge. Knowledge is power. In every aspect of it, knowledge is power. And so we need to really get our young ladies to the point where we educate them as to what they need to do in order to navigate this big, bad rental world. Thank you.
Yes.
You asked the earlier question about what we wanted to learn more. That topic right there is a topic we need to hear more.
So,
Just
eviction.
Yeah, we need to hear more.
Eviction.
Connected to homelessness, absolutely.
Connected, definitely connected to homelessness. I thought her presentation was very compelling, and so, but that's definite. Any other questions?
You know, when we first started this, when we started thinking about why this was so important, is that if we remember at the very first meeting, it was very clear I said, when you understand what's going on with, one, the eviction rate in the city of Columbus, and in Franklin County. We have the highest, one of the highest in the country, more than New York. And so when you realize that once you get evicted, that is the direct correlation to you being homeless. Because, as she said, it does not come off your record. And so, based upon that, you now have women who are now in the shelter and then trying to get a place based upon, the shelter board trying to help them to find some place. But it's about the eviction rate. And so what she's saying is not being educated, you're not making enough money to make ends meet, and you get evicted. And if you've never been to eviction court, it's a place to go and see. And there are some good magistrates and judges, I'm not gonna, but it is the number of people that come through on a daily basis that are being evicted. And the majority of them are women of color.
Yes.
And thank you so much for your presentation, and in particular, learning this component of the municipal court that this stays with you for life, which is an incredible financial marker that has collateral consequences. So are there other education resources we might build around this presentation to help us get more information about the possibilities of this group being able to advocate to the municipal court? So I would need more information to be able to fully understand that aspect of the issue, but it seems like a really important advocacy possibility for this commission. So thank you so much.
Anybody else? Oh, Michael, yeah.
To answer that question in small part, the Legal Aid Society of Columbus has some attorneys that are focused exclusively on eviction and some of the issues thereof, so that might be one idea, among others. And just for all of our edification, there's a book called Evicted that I would imagine a lot of us are already aware of, by Matthew Desmond. That's a good read among many other good reads on this issue.
Thank you.
We actually just did a report on eviction for the Legal Aid Society of Columbus, and they're having a release event on, I think, November 26th. So if you're interested, definitely check that out.
So I wonder if there's a possibility of getting that executive summary or that report? If that would be an opportunity for every commissioner to get that.
Additional point of follow-up. I believe eviction is one of the topic areas that the Women's Commission is also taking up as a part of their work. And I don't know that that commission is particularly geared towards, I'm sorry, thank you, that was the problem. It's putting on my lecture voice, it wasn't working. Particularly geared towards looking at the racialized experiences of women in Columbus. So I'm wondering if there is a way for our two commissions to have a cross conversation at some point around the issues that we have been exploring, such that we learn from, potentially learn from each other, or share cross points of advocacy. If eviction is one area that we see cross-fertilization and we can talk about it through a race and gender lens, then that could be extraordinary for the work.
Absolutely. Any other comments? Yes, ma'am.
So again, thank you so much. I've given out your card many times for mediation services. I didn't actually know that you handled evictions also. But question, and you may not know this, but has any research gone to looking at if these females are being evicted due to the males in their lives and them being involved with us and violence issues and things like that? And have you done any of those numbers? Do you have any of that research?
Speak into the microphone.
Based on the numbers that I showed tonight, at least 30% of the young ladies were domestic violence victims. And what we do, we also have the eviction prevention workshop that we offer to the community at no cost. Part of what I also do too is to educate young lady on the VAWA, the Victim Against Women's Act, and also educate them on how to navigate around that in regards to their housing. Another 22%, if I'm remembering correctly, were sexually abused, and then about 7% were actually trafficked, victim of trafficking. So there are some other components to what's leading to the eviction, and a lot of time is they're trying to get out of the situation. One of the biggest issues that we're also seeing too, not really with the private local landlords, but with the corporations, which is a huge issue to me, is that they're not really, I don't want to say care, but really they don't care about what's going on in that person's life at the time, especially when it comes to the domestic violence and the other violence that are going on. So they're filing evictions no matter what.
Can you just of them are through domestic violence? Are both parties evicted, or just the black women are being evicted?
Unfortunately, with those numbers, the male name is not even on the lease. So
I
the
see.
leases are in the women's name. And so they're facing eviction not only because of non-payment of rent or noises, these violations, but there's no repercussion, unfortunately, for the men in their life. So the women are facing the brunt of everything. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know about you, but tonight was content-rich, emotionally draining, and clearly the reason why we need to be doing this work.
Well, make sure what time is it? Time for us to think. So, 6:23, we're getting out 7 minutes early, and I want to just say really thank you for being here and participating. And again, I think tonight we certainly focused on answering these two important questions: what is the quality of life for Black girls in the foster care system as well as the homeless system, and for us to really think about and listening to what this community can do to help our girls, and then And then lastly, for you to go back and think about other opportunities to hear from individuals that we think are important to this work before we do this final report, and to go back and just think about, where our girls are in this community. And we're here because we are hopeful that their lives will be turning around, and we all play a role in helping to turn our girls' lives around. So I thank you for your work. I thank CTV, our Columbus Government and Television Channel 3. They are here making sure that our community is able to hear and learn about the current status of Black girls in our community. So thank you, and our commission meeting is adjourned.